Hi there, and welcome to this episode of Behind the Business with myself, Steve Swift, the guy that does business strategy and consulting to help businesses get from where they are now to ultimately where they want to be to become a 6 or a 7-figure giant in their industry by using processes within the business and how to generate more leads and close more sales. And as ever, I'm joined by my good friend John. Hi, John. How are you doing?
Hi, Steve. I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, it's been a busy week, but it's been a good one, and I know you've had a busy week as well. And hopefully our listeners have also had a good one. I know we gave them quite a bit to think about last week, and what you're primarily going to be talking about this week is going to follow on from that. So why don't you start by telling us what we're going to be doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So just as a key starting point, if you didn't see last week's episode, I'd recommend you just stop watching this one and go back and watch that first. And the reason why I say that it is key to what we're going to discuss in today's podcast. Because last week we spoke about how you handle the influx of sales into your business first. And today we're going to be talking about how you get the spike of sales in your business. And the reason why I'm referring you back to that one first is John went through a really good he went through an exercise with some charts which demonstrated really well how you can mentally prepare for a particular process and where you need to be and timing it right as well. So you're ready to actually receive that influx and handle it and be in the best mind space as possible. So it really showed it off very, very well. And also the processes that I touched on with regards to the influxes and what you need as processes in your business to handle that is really key. So taken that you've done that and you paused me about 30 seconds ago and you now join us on today's episode, we'll get stuck right in because today's topic is how to get a spike in sales for your business. So last week we showed you how to handle this. Now we're going to show you how you get that. So like anything in business, a process to have of each particular task that's needed is key to having the best success. And over the years that I've been in business and working with business owners, it never fails to surprise me that many people do it off the fly. They don't really have a set process in place. It's more a case of we just need to get the next business in because we need the money in the bank to keep the business moving forward. And that's a really sticky wicket to be on, really. You don't have much control. You feel the pressure all the time, the stresses, and we've talked about this on previous podcasts. Is there's plenty of stress and pressures in business as it is. The idea is to make things easier on yourself by reducing or removing those stresses as much as possible, if not in its entirety, of certain tasks. So today, when we talk about the process of getting this spike in sales, we're going to look at it again at quite high level because we could really deep dive into this and it would take far longer than the roughly 30 minutes we tend to run these podcasts for. But it's not to say if you wanted further help on this, then feel free to reach out either to myself or to John, and either of us can book a clarity call session with you, which is completely free. It's up to you. It's just something else, another way of us providing a service to you and helping your business grow. So what do we talk about when we're on about a formula? Well, just before I start on this, I want to bring John in because anything to do with business, anything to do with processes and running a process always has an element of understanding of where you need to be in your mind in a way that you're prepared to actually action things or to control things and to recognize it. And if your mindset isn't right, then it's not going to deliver the best results. So, John, is there anything you can add into this before I actually go through the specific formula?
Yeah, there is. As you were talking there, Steve, you touched on a point which I think is quite important, and it applies to not just for people starting up a business, but for anybody who's got a major project on. But using a business as an example, you mentioned there that people tend to do things on the fly. And I know that we said in the last episode, and actually it's something we've alluded to in every episode, is that idea that people have expectations about, if I do this, I'm suddenly going to be a millionaire, or I'm suddenly going to get all this, all these clients and all these customers. And they don't think about how they're going to get them. They don't think about how they're going to cope with them when it comes, and they don't think about the gap in between. So I think the key to this is really about, it's great that everyone's excited. It's great that you need to do this, but it's also about taking a step back, taking a breath, and recognizing that there's a big difference between what is a naive view of an entrepreneur and somebody that's running a sustainable business. And what the difference is knowing the process, which you're going to cover as we go along, but it's also about knowing how to plan the activities in that process to give you sustainability. And if you think back to the graph that we showed last week of the product life cycles or the marketing life cycle, it comes back to that. Is, are you planning to make sure you've got consistency of income? Because if you haven't got consistency of income, you really haven't got a sustainable business. What you've got is a project.
Yes.
And so I think that mindset is very different to what certain YouTube heroes will tell people on their 5-minute videos, you know, of do this, it's great, you'll never have to work again. It's not true, right? It's work that you enjoy, it's work that you choose to do, but it's a process and you have to work the process. And that understanding that it's work that you choose to do, that's the key in this, I think. Does that make sense, Steve? Does that fit with your understanding?
It does. You've worded that so well, John, as always. Hence, you are the expert in what you do. You know, hopefully people understand, and there's no reason why they can't and shouldn't be able to, is to take on board what you said there and think things through for themselves as to what have they done previously. And we don't like to hammer on too much about past experiences because you can't do anything about that. Obviously, it's been done, and that's it. If it's affected your business in a negative way or it's made it struggle a bit more, you can't do that. But what you can do is look to improve things going forward, and that's what all of our podcasts are all about: is sharing valuable content and tips and actionable activities people can do.
Just to
improve the business.
Sorry, Steve. Just to didn't mean to talk over you there, but you just hit on something really, really important, because we tend to think, or I tend to go down the route of we're talking about new business owners, but actually there's a proportion of people that listen to this podcast who are previous business owners, or they're in a business, they're trying to turn it around or whatever. And that's really important, is that you can't do anything about your past. But what you can do is, if you've made mistakes, and if those mistakes have affected clients or the way that you're perceived by clients or whatever, is the one thing you can do solidly is be completely honest with yourself and be completely open with your client. Because as we will no doubt allude to in all of these podcasts, and we already have, it's about trust. It's about you trusting your own abilities, but it's about the client trusting what you're saying. And regardless of whether you're telling them the truth or not, if they look and say, well, that's not what you did 2 years ago, you need to address that before they do, because they won't address it with you, they'll address it with your prospects. So you need to be very, very honest with yourself about where did I go wrong in the past, if I went wrong in the past, or where did I go right in the past? And you need to address that. And that might be as simple as sending out an email saying, this is a new era, you know. Businesses do it all the time. Physical businesses do it all the time with under new management, or, you know, or whatever, you know. But really, what you just need to hold your hand up. There's a great book by Richard Branson called Business Strip Bare, which, if you haven't read it, it's worth a read. And the irony is, he's got a chapter in there about, if something goes wrong, if your PR goes wrong, you have to hold your hand up and you have to say it. Which, the irony of that is, we know that a couple of months ago, that's exactly what happened, and he went into hiding. You've got to walk the walk as well as talk the talk. And if you do that, everyone's human and everybody understands that you're human. And you can cut yourself some slack, because your clients and your prospects will cut you some slack if they know you're being honest with them about what you've done and what you're going to do to put it right. You know, it's a simple formula. I'm really sorry. This is what happened. This is why it happened. This is what I'm going to do to rectify it and make sure it doesn't happen again. And that is ground zero as far as drawing a line under everything and moving forward. Apologize, tell people what you're going to do about it, tell them why it's not going to happen again, and then say, that's the last we're going to talk about it. New era, new start, move on to the new process, which is where you come back in, Steve.
Absolutely, and it's so true, John. I've worked with a few companies where they've had to reinvent themselves. They've had previously given bad service to people. It was one particular was a service providing company, and they did not deliver the best service. They were fairly new. They've been going a year or two. They've done okay, and one thing, but the focus was on the sales and not on the aftercare and making sure it was being maintained. So, and when I went into the business, and it was very quick for me to identify, purely because I've seen it so many times before, but not obviously so obvious to the business owners that felt like they were doing everything right and were scratching their heads going, well, they're getting the best service out of us, so why is there a problem all the time? But they were missing the point. They were missing the pain point, and pain point is part of what I'm going to touch on in this formula I'm about to talk about.
People forget to ask the client, what is the best service as far as the client's concerned? Because you can guess all day long, and you can give what you think is the greatest service possible. But if it's the greatest service, but it's the wrong service, the client's not going to be happy. And you'll be sat there all day going, I don't understand this. We're giving the best service ever. But the client doesn't see it.
Yeah. It's like the old adage, isn't it? It's like, when a tree falls down in a forest in the middle of nowhere, does it make a noise when it hits the ground? Well, if there's no one there, no one knows. But the assumption is that, yes, it should, because all trees, when they hit the ground, will make a noise. But it's an assumption, and that's what people do in business. They assume they're doing the right thing by the customers and the clients, but why aren't they coming back to you? Why aren't they giving you good reviews on Trustpilot or Google reviews or Facebook or, endorsing you on LinkedIn sort of thing? There's a reason for that. And you're missing the problem that's actually being caused, or the bit where you've not quite delivered to meet their expectations. And it's not about the customer's always right, but do you know what? The customer's going to get you more business. Directly or indirectly, they will get you more business if you serve them rather than sell to them. And again, this is part of the formula I'm going to go through. So it's an interesting point that you made there, and a very valid one, and it fits nicely in. So we'll jump into the formula now, which ties in what you've been saying, John. And it's all about understanding your audience when you're looking to get a spike in your business. And it's not guessing or assuming, it's getting to know your audience. It's doing what I teach my clients is build the ideal client avatar. And that is understand who your ideal client is, that one person. Now, I know it's going to be more than one person, but if you do more than one people, you're generalizing and you're not targeted and focused. And you need to do that if you're going to get any kind of success, early doors and longevity out of your advertising, or even your organic marketing that you do, because you don't know how to speak to that person properly. You might not be in the right groups and things like that if you're on Facebook or on LinkedIn. So understand your audience and do your avatar based on your ideal client, the number one person, male, female, doesn't matter what their age is, but you need to know it. So call them by the name. For example, off the top of my head, say ideal client for a dentist might be a person called Chris. Chris is in his late 50s. He's not really been to a dentist that much, but because kids came on the scene late in life, so now he's a father, and his wife's badgered him for however long to go and get his teeth checked because he's been complaining about it. So now he's married as well, that he's decided he's going to make an appointment. But the downside is his work gets in the way because he's a self-employed plumber, for example. So now you're getting to understand your ideal client, right? They're plumbers. So now you can start targeting plumbers that are married, that have kids, that are in the age group of 45 to 55, for example. You've just now targeted your audience down based on your understanding of who your ideal client is. And being the business owner, you should know who your ideal client is because you've got customers. You've been serving people for however many years you've been in business, however short or long period that might be. But you should understand who your ideal customer is. You'll have lots of different types of customers, but who's your ideal customer? The one that, I don't know, uses you the most, the one that refers you to friends and family, the one that leaves the review. Who is that ideal client? And focus on knowing everything about them, their interests, their hobbies, their home life, what they like to do, what gets them buzzing, what their expectations level are, what the time frame of things are, relevant to, as I said, the plumber example, for when they need something doing in the house, plumbing wise. If you get to understand that and you write that out in a document, then you can suddenly realize, right, this is the sort of person, this is their interest, this is where they hang out, this is what gets them going. You can then start to build your ads if you're doing paid ads, or you can start working on your organic by joining the right groups and looking out, and you'll identify very quickly who your ideal client is to start communicating with them, jumping into posts that they make and putting your opinion or your thoughts or your suggestions to be helpful across to a problem or a pain that they might be having. So focus on how your solution solves someone's biggest pain is the next stage. You've identified that person and you've really deep dived into who that person is. Now you need to understand what their biggest pain is and then position your solution, your number one solution that fixes their number one pain. Nothing else matters to them. They just need to get rid of this. And your solution, your number one solution, needs to be able to just take that straight out, knock it out of the park without any qualms, quibbles, risks, nothing. You are the person that can solve that problem. And the way you do that is you need to align yourself. So to attract people, you need to do what we call the WIFM. It's something that's been on the go for many, many years. People don't want to be sold to in the UK. Not really, unless it's something that really is something at that moment in their life where they need it. But then it's more of a case of a need or a want or a desire rather than, again, being sold to. Different countries and cultures work in different ways. But I know from 16 plus years of experience, you try and sell somebody something that they don't want or need or have a problem with at that time, you're like trying to get blood out of a stone. It's so difficult and pretty pointless. And you're wasting time, energy and effort and money, etc. on doing that. So first of all, look at the WIFM effect. And this is looking at your customer's point of view is what's in it for me. They're not bothered about you as a business owner. And I know John gave me some fantastic, guidance and some tips on wording of one of the landing pages which I have for a solution which I'm putting out to the marketplace that's live at the moment. And it was just a tweak of words, that made me realize. So I'm still learning, and I always like to learn something, even though I have got a huge amount of knowledge and skill and successes of multiple businesses behind me that have gone from humble beginnings to being multi-million-pound businesses. I still learn, and I like to do that because I think the moment you say I know everything, you know nothing. Exactly. So it's important to take on board, and hopefully you're taking on board the knowledge and the advice and suggestions that we're giving you in these podcasts and applying it to your business. Otherwise, you're just driving around in your car listening to the audio stream version of this if you're in the car, or you're watching this video now. And yeah, it's entertaining, isn't it? There's a guy with reactive glasses on, and it looks a bit weird because it's like, why is it tinted? You don't want to see me. Well, I can take my glasses off, but then I can't see a great deal. So it's just because the sun's in my eyes, But so what's that going to do, for your business? It's going to do nothing for your business. But if you apply what we're saying into your business and look at your business knowing this knowledge that you didn't know, 10, 15 minutes ago now, John, something like that, then this is going to change your business. So the WIFM effect, what's in it for me? Think from the perspective of your ideal client. What do they want? They've got a pain and a problem. They're looking for a solution to that. So as long as you position yourself to say, bang, this is what I can do to help. This is the solution. And you can do that by using a specific image, something that's very direct to what that pain and problem is. Now, we can give examples later on, or as I said at the top of this podcast, if you want to set a clarity call up, we can look at things like that, and John can help on the expertise that he has to understand how you go about that as well. But if you use a particular image in an ad, certainly with all the noise and the excitement, everything that's going on there at the moment, you need to grab people's attention very, very quickly. You need to do what's called a pattern interrupt, which is when they're scrolling through their newsfeed over and over and over again. And it's the same on Instagram as it is on Facebook and LinkedIn. You need something that's going to make them stop and go, oh, what was that? And the second you do that, you're pulling them in. You've suddenly got their attention. You've done a pattern interrupt. You've stopped them continuously scrolling by, seeing other things, and that's extremely powerful.
I think there's a key point here. Well, there's a couple of points I wanted to make. The first is when you're looking at your avatar, and you've just touched on it as well, is you've got to solve a problem, which means you've got to know absolutely what the problem is. But you also have to know what drives your client to look for that solution. So to give an example of, there's an awful lot of online businesses which are about, do this, you'll make loads of money. Well, that's all very well if your prospective client is driven by a financial impetus. But what if they're not? You know, so when you're putting that avatar together, it's not just about the demographics of how old are they, you know, have they got any kids, what do they do for a living, and all the stuff that Steve just mentioned is incredibly important. But you need to be asking yourself, what is the thing what's their why? Basically, why do they want to solve this problem? Do they want to solve this problem because they've got financial issues and so money is the main thing? Or is security the biggest thing for their family or whatever? Now, when you apply that context to looking for an image or wording or whatever for an advert that's going to solve the problem that they've got, which is not the same as what drives them to solve it, you put those two together, gives the context, you're much more likely to get an image or wording that hits home, because it shows, it immediately hits them emotionally. It's not just an educational headline. It's an emotional hit, and that's what drives people to buy. Because Steve's absolutely right, particularly in the UK, we don't like being sold to, but we do like to buy. And we like to feel like we've discovered something that's really going to help. And that's the difference. If you say to somebody, this is your problem, I can solve it. Now, here's the other thing that's important with what Steve's just been saying, is that the vast majority of people who are looking for a solution to a problem online, it's not the first time they've thought about this problem, right? They've tried to solve it in other ways. They've tried to solve it themselves, and it hasn't worked, or it hasn't worked the way that they think it has. And they've got an idea in their minds of what that solution should be. But that solution doesn't work necessarily, right? But if your marketing message alludes to the solution that they think should work, they're going to be much more interested. Now, I'm not suggesting that you should put out a marketing headline that doesn't relate to your product or doesn't relate to your solution. But what I am saying is, when it comes to, particularly with online marketing, and again, this is just from experience, but and this is not my headline, it's just something that I learned, that I tried out, and it works. You've got to sell people what they want and give them what they need, which means your marketing has to be based around, I'm going to solve this problem and I'm going to do it in a way that you expect. If someone turns around and says, there should be a magic bullet out there, right? Well, magic bullets, as we know, do not exist. But what you can offer people is a speedy, efficient, as long as you offer it, a speedy, efficient solution to the problem, and present it in a way that they would expect to see it presented. And then say, you know what? We can do that speedily, efficiently. We can do everything you need. But before we do that, you need to learn this. So that they're moving through a process that you need them to get to. Because it's human nature. Everybody wants to have the immediate solution. They want to move faster than they should be. They want to run before they can walk. And you can't do that. So particularly if you're in an informational business, your role, or part of your role, is to take people and say, take a step back. Set your expectations. We're going to do this, but this is the process you have to follow, because people aren't expecting it. Does that again, Steve, does that ring true with your experience of talking to people about this process and the way that they expect things to work?
Totally, because the one point that you mentioned there, and I mean, the amount of quality that just came across from what John was just saying that you can apply to your business is like drops of gold every single time. And it's the what, or the want and the need.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a topic which I cover at great length when looking to position a business, when they're looking to advertise and promote themselves, because there's a huge difference in mindset of what somebody says, I want this, and somebody that says, I need this. You know, it's a big shift, because wanting something is they can do without it. They'd like to have it, but they can do without it. But a need, they can't live without it. It is a need. It's almost like a must. And I break that down and go into it a lot further, sort of thing, in a presentation that I do elsewhere. But just to reiterate what John was saying there, that is something that you really need to consider understanding and taking on board. So once you've grabbed their attention with their image, just going back to what I was saying before and carrying on from what John was saying, it's, you know, understanding that they want this and now they need it. And if you use the image to get that pattern interrupt to grab their attention, then what do you do? Which leads nicely to what John's just said. The next step from there is then to take that image that's really hit that point home very well emotionally to grab their attention and stop them in the tracks or stop them scrolling in the online world. Is how do you follow that up? Well, you follow it with what they call body text, which is the wording that's used in the ad or in your post or in your comment. And you've got to tell a story that has a point and a purpose. It's got to resonate with that person based on the image that they've seen. Otherwise, if it's not congruent, then there's a disconnect. And all of a sudden they get confused. And it's like, well, I thought this was what I was looking for. And this person understood me, but what they're saying doesn't ring true.
Yeah.
This doesn't make sense. This isn't exactly what I'm looking for. And you need to be specific and exact, which is why I said earlier about being very critical about your ideal client avatar, and exactly the same thing as what John said to follow that point up. So you need to make sure your storytelling, you're embellishing it and you're emphasizing the pain point even more to get it across, and you're relating it to personal circumstance. And if you know your client avatar well enough, you're able to do that without missing the mark, or certainly not missing it too much, and it's still been on point and still being relevant enough for that person to stay engaged. And they get entrenched in it. You're drawing them in emotionally, and the more and more they read from seeing the image that grabbed their attention and went, yes, this is what I'm looking for, then they're reading the body text and you're taking them on this journey. And there's a formula that's used with that to write good copy and direct response copy. And it's all about bringing people through this journey. And we'll cover the actual formula for ad copy on another episode, because we can go quite well into that as well, John, I feel. So, but as long as you make a clear point and there's a purpose to what you're saying, then you've got to make it very clear to them at the end. Sorry, you've got to make it very clear to them at the end. Irony there. In the call to action, what do they do next? Yeah. You've grabbed their attention. You've explained to them. You're on the same wavelength as them. You are the person that can take that biggest pain, that one single pain, but it's huge, with your one solution, which is just as huge and bigger and can take it away with ease, with simplicity. You need to make this process seamless, and as seamless as possible, because that's important. If there's any hurdles or hiccups or the flow doesn't continue, so like the image grabs their attention and flows beautifully into the copy, which continues through, which flows beautifully into what they do next to continue this journey. You don't want to break this romanticism of what's going to happen. You need to keep them on that honeymoon period, if you like, that yes, I'm believing, I'm trusting you, but I'm believing in you because of what you're telling me. I'm getting reassured and I want to know more. I want to engage with you further. You're building the rapport up on a very personal and an emotional level. And like John touched on, emotion is a powerful thing. People will react to something based on emotion. And that's John's field. I can explain bits, but that is his field. And again, that's probably another podcast, John, to be honest.
Yeah, it's definitely another episode. We can spend hours on that. Just conscious of the time here, Steve.
Yeah, of course.
I guess we should probably look at some homework.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for me, the thing to do or to ask you to look at doing, if you're serious about making a change in your business, and hopefully you are and you're getting plenty of value out of these podcasts, is just have a look at the last bit of ad that you did. ad work that you did, whether it was online or if you're still doing newspapers, and some people do, or look at the posts that you're making or communicating and putting out there. Is it really, one, grabbing someone's attention, your ideal client? So work on what I said earlier. Look at this podcast earlier on. I broke down how you go about doing that with the ideal customer avatar. Break that down in detail first, and then move on to looking at a previous post or Instagram ad that you put out there, or Facebook ad, or LinkedIn post, or whatever else is you want to put out there. There's so many topics we can go into. And then break it down and look at it. And does it follow this flow? Does it, first of all, really hit home on an emotional level with regards to the pain that someone's having? Does that image that you've used portray that, based on what John said? Does it portray that bang on point? No fluffiness, no either side, bang down the middle, straight between the eyes. Because that's what's going to grab their attention the fastest and stop them moving on or continuing on the day. You're going to grab them really quick. And then the copy, the words that you use, does it fit with the image nicely? Does it flow nicely through from the image? And does it have a purpose and a point? And then finally, does it have a very clear call to action on how people can proceed? And you've got to make it seamless. So it's not a case of, if you really like this, why don't you send us an email? Because you know what? They haven't got the time to send you an email. They're going to go somewhere else, because like John also said, it's not the first time they will have looked to solve this problem or this pain that they've been having. So you need to make it seamless. While you're here now, click on this link to get instant access to more information that would be useful based on what we said, or to book a call with us. Or click on this link. If they're on a mobile, you can link it directly to a telephone number that can ring instantly. You've got to make it seamless. Remove all the barriers and all the hurdles. Keep that flow going nice and smoothly. Keep that pace going. Keep that tonality that you've used in the words and how they're reading it. And read it back as well. So get someone else to have a look at it within your business and organization and say, what does this mean to you? And if you're both thinking the same thing, you know you've worded it properly. If you've both got two different interpretations, then there's something not right and you're not being clear with your wording. So hopefully that's your homework. Have a look at doing that. We'd love to hear back from you and say, do you know what? That's highlighted. We were so far off the mark with our images, or our wording was so wrong, but we're not sure where we're getting right. Can you have a look at it for us? Or we're going to get an expert copywriter to come in and have a look at it now. Thanks for that. Anything along them lines, that's fine. We just want to hear back from you to make sure that you're not getting lost and confused in what we're trying to put across in these podcasts. So taking that you understand what your homework is from me this week instead of John. Hope you've got plenty of value out of this. Topic for next week. Now, John, we need to be racking our brain on this. I have a few ideas. I'm not sure which way to go with it. So we might have to surprise people with next week's podcast.
I think we leave it as a surprise. We've certainly, I know we mentioned last time, we've got probably 6 or 7 different topics that we can choose from. And I think we'll leave that as a surprise for people.
Sounds good. Well, as always, everybody, appreciate your time. We're blessed to have you watching this. John will make sure, obviously, there's the relevant links to get in touch with us. You can download this and listen to it on iTunes, I believe. Is it, John?
Yeah, we're on iTunes, YouTube, and obviously we've got the URL to the website up at the top of the video as well. So yeah, go and subscribe on YouTube. Give us a like on iTunes or your preferred podcast platform. We should be everywhere, and if we're not, let us know and we'll make sure we are. And we'll speak to you we'll see you next time.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
Take care.